Look at your neighbor on the way down and say, I want something new. I want something new. That bright and morning star. He closes the book of Revelation by saying that I, Jesus, am the bright and morning star. That morning star announces the dawn of a new day, the dawn of a new beginning. It's interesting how the gospel, the book of the Bible, the Revelation ends with there's a new day dawning. There's a new time. There's a new way of living, another way, if you will. That just grabs my attention every time I read it. And then when we turn to this gospel and we recognize that the wise men have come. They've come 2 years later. Jesus was born in Bethlehem 2 years ago. And Matthew opens the story of Jesus about 2 years after the birth, afterwards, later on. And these wise men come from the east. They're not even here, and they're looking for the king. And they go, where is he? And somebody says, who? And they say, oh, the son of David, the son of Abraham, the son of Mary, the virgin, the child, the son of God. Where is he? And everyone in Jerusalem is rather disturbed, and they don't know where he is. These wise men have come because they saw the star. Because you see, when Christ steps back into the atmosphere of this universe, it changes this universe. That a word cannot come and it not alter what's here. That when God created the world, he spoke a word and this world began. You think that he who spoke the word is going to arrive and it not change the stars? It's interesting to me how people can't recognize that there are things that happen in the world because the word has arrived. And the word has arrived. And the heavens changed. And the people from the east, the Arabs, showed up. I want to warn some of you, the Arabs are coming. It's going to scare you. Because people from the outside are going to show up. And it's going to frighten you. Because people that you didn't think would ever hear are going to hear. They're going to notice a change in the atmosphere. And these men came from the east because they had seen a star. I think they literally were expecting to find the baby in the nursery off the palace. And they showed up in the time of Herod. That's an interesting statement. I mean, you know, this is your time, right? If you're here, this is your time. We've lived through, you ever heard people talk about in the old times, in the old days, or in the days of Abraham Lincoln, in the days of when England was great, in the days when this or that, in the time of Herod, say Herod. Herod is an interesting time. Herod the Great, this guy that thinks he's the king over Israel, and he's sitting there, and these wise men come, and they come looking for this king. And you do have to understand that Bethlehem is only 4 miles south. It's Yoder. I want you to understand that it's not that far away. It's Yoder. You could walk to Bethlehem from Jerusalem. I mean, it's not like this star is pinpointed over the manger. This star is in the vicinity. I mean, if you see the star, you would think maybe it would. And they come and they ask Herod, this king, this puppet, if you will, this pawn of the empire, this man who has conquered all the other tribes, and now he's ruling over the tribe, and he's really a pawn for Caesar. And he negotiates deals with Pilate and with priests, and he thinks he's subduing the world, and he's going to maintain his kingdom, and he's going to pass his kingdom on. And can I tell you, this Herod will kill innocent children to protect his kingdom. Into the time when men think they're in control of their own destiny. In a time when men think they're ruling, in a time when men and women are building their own thing, Jesus appears to announce his kingdom in spite of our feeble attempts and our fragile realities. This is not, are you listening to? In that time, in the time when man is doing things his way, in the time when men think they're powerful, in time when we think we can control everything. You got to understand, the dynasty of the Herods would kill the innocent children that were 2-year-olds and younger. The Herods would take the head of John the Baptist, and the Herods would nod to crucify the Christ. The Herods were people and men and a time and a season when they were living their own life. Into that time, Christ is born. Into that moment of humanity, he who is timeless comes, and he will change all time. He'll close down this age, and he'll open up another age. You and I are living in another time. Jesus would say one day, my time has come. We have to recognize that Christ breaks into that time, and there's no room. There's no vacancy in the inn. No one's taking notice. No one's paying attention. They're just simply busy living their own lives in their own world, doing their own thing. And they're unaware. You would think that Jerusalem would have been aware of the birth of Christ, because the birth of Christ did not take place in the shadows. For heaven's sake, angels announced his birth just 2 or 3 miles south of town. I mean, if an angel hovers in the sky and starts singing, I think Hutch would know it. It's just right there. The Bible says in Luke's gospel that the shepherds made it widely known. Let's understand something, that the shepherds were those that brought the sheep into the Passover year after year after year. The shepherds would have come into Jerusalem and said, you ain't going to believe what happened. The shepherds would have been walking all through Hutchinson from Yoder going, hey, he was born. The baby that's going to come of the virgin that was going to be the Messiah, he's come. Listen, there's no reason why Jerusalem did not know that he was born. The angels had sang, the shepherds had told everybody. In fact, if you keep reading the book, you'll find out that 8 days after his birth, Mary and Joseph walked from Bethlehem to Jerusalem, walked into the temple, and Simeon, the priest, came out and grabbed the baby and go, oh, this is the light to the Gentiles. Looky here. And behind him would come Anna, the intercessor, and the intercessor would go, that's him. Listen, there's no reason why we don't know that Christ is here today. It's not a secret. The angels have announced it. The shepherds have widely declared it. And the intercessors are telling us. And the wise men from the east show up and say, where is he? Why isn't he in the nursery? Why aren't you caring for him? But you see, when people are living in their own world, they can't recognize the other world that is right here. That's what Christmas happens every year. I watch people walk through and they're so busy with their own world that they don't recognize that the Christ has come to reveal to you that there's another world besides the one you're living in. This Christmas story proves, these wise men reveal that nothing will awaken those who refuse to be disturbed. That nothing will shake people if they don't want to be shaken. That most people are too busy living. The scriptures say that he came to his own, but his own couldn't see him. And so these Arabs show up, these Arabian wise men. They show up and they say, well, where is he? And Matthew writes that Herod was disturbed and all of Jerusalem disturbed. Christ is disturbing. I mean, when the King of the Kings show up, he's disturbing to our little world. Listen, they're not disturbed, they're threatened. Christ threatens our way of living. He threatens our way of thinking. He comes to reveal to us that it's not our way, it's his way. He comes to challenge us. Christmas comes to challenge us every year. Hey, wake up, there's a king. Hey, wake up, there's another one here. Christmas doesn't come just so that you can go through and eat your turkey. No, Christmas comes to remind us that it's not our way, it's his way. Christmas breaks into our world and says, hey, wait a minute. Heaven has come. The kingdom is here. We're supposed to be living his way, not our way. We're supposed to break out of our, oh, well. But see, we can get so caught in that 2 years can go by before we go. And it takes an outsider. It takes someone from the east showing up. Are you kidding me? These people are threatened. When I read this story, I begin to wonder, what is it that makes these men so wise? Who in the world are they, right? They just showed up because they... Listen, anybody remember Abraham? Really, seriously. Anybody remember Abraham? He's the old guy that couldn't have kids, right? He's now 99, his wife is 89 or 90, and God had promised him children, right? And then years went by, and he gets old, and there's no way for him to have children, and then all of a sudden he has a child named Isaac. Remember this? And he's 100 years old when he has this child of promise. And he has this child of promise, this miracle birth. And he and Sarah hold this baby, and they name him Isaac, and he means laughter. It's a laughing matter when you're 100 and you have a child. You didn't get it. I mean, it'll make you giggle, right? And Sarah lives about 20, 30 years, and then Sarah dies, and now the old man's 120. And he marries a second time. And his second wife's name is Keturah. You can read this in Genesis chapter 25. So Abraham now has a second wife named Keturah. And he has 6 more sons. Wow. This 120, and he has 6 more sons. Genesis chapter 25 says, when he died, everything that he owned went to Isaac. But while he was living, he gave gifts to his 6 other sons. And he sent them to the east. Did you know that Abraham had 6 other sons? Oh, come on. How many of you grew up going, many sons has Father Abraham? You just didn't know. Father Abraham has many sons. There's 6 other sons living in the east. And those 6 other sons understood that Isaac and Jacob, Israel, Moses, were going to be Israel. They were the people of God. But there are these Gentile sons that live in the east. Their mother's name was Keturah, but their father was Abraham. They knew what Isaiah had written. Isaiah had said that one of these days a child would be born, and he would be the light and the justice and the righteousness of the Gentiles, the sons sent to the east. They understood that through Abraham, all the nations, not just one, would be blessed by the son of Abraham. And they had been waiting for thousands of years over there. They had read the promises, and they knew that there was one that would be born. Though they were living out here and they were stepbrothers too, they knew there was a promise that was coming. And so when the word comes into the world and the atmosphere changes and the lights alter, they saw the morning star. Sometimes you can be so close and so familiar that you miss what God is doing in the moment called your life. Honey, you don't want to miss this Christmas. This is a moment. This is not just a history lesson of yesterday. I'm trying to tell you that Christ is here right now. He's in your life, and there is a star that's shining, and this can be the beginning of a new day for you, or you can just get stuck in your rut and miss what the shepherds say and miss what the prophets are saying, and you can miss the angels, and an outsider will show up and say, where is he? Are you in this room? If you think I'm preaching some simple little message, no, I believe that I'm prophetic when I look at you. I believe God gave me a word for us this year. In fact, if I can't preach prophetically, I'm going to sit down. People that are just going to be historic make me ill. So listen to me. There are people that show up and go, where is he? And they are the half-brothers to Israel. And they know that this star has come. They understand what's taking place. They didn't say, if the king. They said, where is the king? They didn't. Listen, wise people act on what they believe. Wise people don't just believe it. Wise people get up and leave their home, bring their gifts, and travel a distance. They seek God. Wise people always move on what they believe. And these people had been moved to come. See, in their mind, they didn't come so they could go to heaven. They didn't come so that they could ask a prayer. They didn't come to get their needs met. My God, they're rich. They didn't come because they needed anything. They came because this is the king. They came simply because of who he is and who he was and who he always will be. They came to worship. And the Herods of this world, the deal makers of this world, the people that are pawns in the hands of the Roman empires and the governments of this world, they go, well, just a minute, I'll get the book. I'm telling you, wise people are already going, excuse me? Herod goes, just a minute, I'll get the religious people together and we'll read the book. Then wise people are going, I already read the book. The wise people are here because they know the word. The wise people have already read the promise. That's why they're here. They didn't need the priest to read them the book. They had already read the book. They knew what was taking place. I'm telling you, sometimes you got to back away from religious people because religious people read the book to figure out what's wrong with you. Religious people read the book to find out who's right, who's wrong, who's in, who's up, who's out, No. You read the book, but Jesus would say, you don't read the book for that reason. You read the book to see me. You have to understand, those wise men had already found the promise in the book. I think they were already backing out the door. Sometimes you come to the Herods of this world and you got to move on. I say with me, move on. You hear me, my friend, we need to move on. We need to move past those people that think they're still searching. I have found the Christ. I'm not looking for him. I know who he is. My faith is in him and him alone. It's in Jesus and no one and nothing else. I have found him and I've come to worship him. Herod goes, now when you find him, come back. Look at your neighbor and say, we ain't coming back this way. No. We ain't coming back by you. No, thank you very much. So here are these wise men, these half-brothers of Israel, and they've come from the east. I want to give you 4 little lessons that I think wise men can teach us this morning. 4 little lessons that I believe could affect 2019. 4 little lessons that if we look at the wise men, we can recognize why they're wise. We can recognize why Matthew starts his gospel not with Mary and the shepherds, but with wise men who can, after the birth of Christ, recognize who he is. Number 1, they were humble people. They were humble people. Can I tell you, every problem in humanity today is due to pride. It's pride. God resists the proud. These rulers, these wealthy, intelligent, educated, they came and they humbled themselves. They got low because he's high. You need to understand we need more humility in our world today. We need to listen to Tim McGraw, be humble and kind. We need to recognize that wise people, my dad used to say, you don't hear this much anymore. Them and a bag of tater chips. Have you ever opened a bag of potato chips? Those little small bags that you get in Quick Shop? You ever open them? Man, when you open them, you want to put them right up to your mouth. Because when you open it, you need to get that magic air. Because that and a bag of chips. I'm telling you, there are not any chips in that bag. There's a bunch of air in that bag, but there ain't no chips in that bag. You didn't get it. Proud people think they're a bag of chips. Humble people recognize that in spite of all that I know, I don't know. Humble people are willing to listen and to learn and to lean on other things. Humble people are always people that find solutions. Humble people, even though they were sent away to the east, they don't become bitter. They just wait on their moment. Humble people understand that we bring ourselves and our resources to this one who is. Peter says, if you humble yourself. James says he lifts up the humble. We need to recognize that wise people most of the time wait their turn and come into a situation bowed down. I think today that Christ is reminding us that he himself took upon the form of a human being, humbled himself, became a man, obedient even unto death. You see, wise people recognize the humility of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ did not come to beat up his enemies. Jesus Christ came to die for those that didn't like him. You see, humble people recognize the humility of a God who will empty himself of his glory and become a child. If we're going to follow Jesus, we will become wise, not in the eyes of men. We will become wise as we humble ourselves before the one who has humbled himself. We must recognize that Christ came to introduce us to a different way of living, one called sacrifice. That this child was born to die. This child was born to give his life for those who would spit on him, curse him, and crucify him. Listen, that's my faith. You have to catch this reality. We must become humble people in the days ahead. We must recognize there's another way of living. We must recognize that the only way up is the way down. Notice how quiet it gets in this room. Wise people are always those who walk in humility. I love C.S. Lewis. Narnia. See, I need to lighten this up a little bit. I love what C.S. Lewis says. C.S. Lewis says, humility is not thinking less of yourself, but it's thinking of yourself less. I want you to understand, when I speak of humility, I'm not telling you to put yourself down. I'm not telling you that you're bad. I'm telling you that humble people think about themselves less, that they think about others more than themselves, that humble people don't wait for other people to apologize. Humble people go first. Humble people don't wait for someone to call them, they call them. Humble people recognize that maybe in the last year I've offended somebody and I might need to apologize. Humble people make the relationship more important than being right. Humble people understand that we need to be together more than we need to prove our point. Humble people bow down. Humble people lead the way. Humble people show up and say, I've seen the star. Where's the king? Number two, the thing that I think a wise man can teach us, the second thing I think is they worshiped a baby for God's sake. They didn't worship a miracle worker. They didn't worship somebody that raised the dead. They didn't worship somebody that answered their prayers and multiplied their food. They worshiped a baby who had done nothing. They worshiped God before there was miracles to be recognized. They recognized that they were not here for the miracles. They were not here for the blessing. They were here because he is the king. And they began to worship before there was a breakthrough, before there was a turnaround, before they felt better, before it looked like it was going to be okay. They worshiped him when he was a child and had done nothing. It's easy to worship after the miracle. It's easy to worship after the breakthrough. It's easy to worship after you've had the financial. But to worship him when he is a child, to worship a baby that is dependent upon somebody and someone else, that is real worship. I understand how people are sitting there waiting. Well, I don't know where they're at. There's more people waiting for worship to get over than people worshiping. They worshiped a child. They worshiped from the beginning. You see, wise men worship his presence, not his performance. Wise men worship him for who he is, for why he is. They understand instinctively and they understand instantly. They've been waiting for 42 generations for this opportunity. They've been waiting for thousands of years. They don't hesitate. They don't resist. They come in and they break down on the floor and they recognize that their worship creates an atmosphere for there to be a manifestation of change. And they understand that though he created us without us, he will never redeem us without us, that we participate in the manifestation of the redemptive plan of God by facilitating and joining with the angels and the archangels and singing glory to God on the earth, peace and goodwill towards men. Holy, holy, holy. We don't remain silent. We begin to break out of the status quo. We begin to lift our voices and our hearts and our hands, and we begin to recognize that now there's one among us that breaks the division between the east and the west, that breaks down the barriers between male and female, that breaks down the barriers of black and white. It breaks down the barriers of Baptist and Methodist and Episcopalian. It breaks down the barriers between those that talk in tongues and don't talk in tongues. It breaks down the barriers between those that are sinners and those that are saints, because when this child is born, The only response is to worship. It's not to look around and see who else is and who else isn't. It's to break the silence of generations and say, this is the King. And he's here. Christmas should arrest us. It should threaten us. It should disturb us. It should shake us out of our sleep and make us recognize. You watch. If you're not careful, outsiders are going to see it before you do. If you're not careful, you're going to get lulled into business as usual. Christmas ought to wake you up. Christmas ought to drive you to your knees. Christmas ought to cause you to worship like you've never worshiped. Well, I bet they sing Joy to the World. Yes. And next year, we're going to sing it again. I bet they're going to put them kids in towels and robes. Yes! And next year, we're going to do it again. I bet they're going to say, yes, silly. Because generation after generation after generation after generation after generation after generation, I'm going to tell the same story. Because I may not see it in my generation, but there is a generation that's going to see the skies open and the King come on a cloud. And I want them to be expecting his appearance. Oh, you're not listening to me. He's coming. I'm telling you, he's coming. He's going to shake up. Could be right now. Could be in the middle of the nonsense we got going on now. And Jesus could just pay and just step on through. Oh, you're not hearing me. While you're wringing your hands, he's saddling a horse. That's another message. Humility, worship. And number 3. I've been trying, if you're here, if you're part of this place, you've been hearing me say this. How many want to go beyond? I want to go above. I want it to be better and more abundant and richer and deeper and higher and wider. I just want more. They opened their treasure. Out of their treasure, once translation came. They didn't just sing, they gave. Because where your treasure is, there your heart is also. Don't talk to me about worship if you don't tithe. Don't talk to me about worship if you don't give offerings to missionaries. Don't talk to me because these half-brothers from the east brought gifts befitting of a king. You need to understand that out of the treasure of a good man, out of the heart of a good come good things. These wise men brought gifts. They didn't come expecting gifts. They brought something with them. If you showed up this morning expecting to get something for nothing, can I tell you something? If you know this is the King, you came bearing gifts worthy of a king. You didn't come in here with just this or this or this. I get people telling me all the time the excuses why they can't. Listen, these people brought gold befitting of a king. They brought frankincense befitting of a priest who makes intercession, and they brought myrrh, which indicates they knew he was going to die. They brought gifts befitting of who he is. They waited for 42 years to bring everything they had, because the presence of the King will reprioritize what you value. Because when Jesus shows up, there's nothing else that has any value. It's Jesus and only Jesus. If you're tight-fisted and holding on to the stuff you got, can I tell you, you're going to miss Christmas. You're going to miss the point. Because Jesus comes and confronts the Herods that are on the inside of us, the Grinches that are inside of us that are holding on to what we got. You can't hold on to what you got and get what he is. 3 things. We humble ourselves. We bring ourselves into this place of worship, and we open up our hearts. This is personal. Listen, Christmas is personal to me. 32 years ago, I buried my dad on the 20th day of December. And I realized right then, if I wasn't careful, the grief of this world would rob me of the gift of the King. I recognized, hold on a minute. And while other people are looking at the things that are not important, the only thing that matters to me this morning is, do you know the Christ who has come that you could live and live eternally? If you came just for the kids dancing, I apologize. You're getting more than you bargained for. I want to give you Jesus this morning. And I want to tell you that wise men humble themselves, that wise men worship, and that wise men open their hearts and empty themselves out. Because when you do, it makes room. It makes room. That's how you prepare a place. That's how you give. That's how you recognize. You see, in the presence of the king, there's no more deals. In the presence of the king, there's no more money halls. In the presence of the king, the love of God rips the rug out from under the religious people that are trying to make another deal. And the fourth thing that I think wise men reveal to us, and then being divinely warned in a dream that they should not return to Herod. Say with me, I ain't going back. I ain't going back. Listen, I haven't got the stomach to go back to the way the world is. I haven't gone back. I'm not going back to the way they run their world. I've come through there, and I'm not going back there. It says they were warned not to return, and they departed for their own country in another way. Say another way. See, if you encounter Jesus this morning, you'll walk out that door another way. There's another world, another way of living, another way of being, another way of thinking, another way of speaking, another way of treating other people, another way of forgetting. Jesus announces it's another time, it's another way, it's another world. If you confront the Jesus, the only thing I want this morning is to walk out of here a different person. I want to walk out of here different. I don't believe that there was once a long time ago that I accepted the Christ. I believe every day I'm confronted with the Christ. I believe every day God shows up in my life and says, hey, see that attitude? That's of the world. Get rid of that. Every day I believe God shows up and says, don't talk like that. I believe every day God shows up and says, hey, you need to get free of that. Wise men go another way. Don't go the way of the world. For heaven's sakes this morning, walk out of here following the Christ. Walk out of here living opposite of the world, quite frankly. Walk out of here recognizing that Jesus is the Lord of your life and that he's the only way you can follow. Walk out of here this morning a humbled individual, a worshiping individual. Walk out of here this morning a generous individual. Walk out of here this morning another type of being. Walk out of here living what is really normal, because what the world is doing is not normal. It's not normal. It's time for us to walk away from the spirit of Herod. It's time for us to walk away from the spirit of this world. It's time for us to be filled with the spirit of heaven. It's time for us to be humble and kind, worshipful, generous, and walk a different way. It really is. It really, really is. And so if it's just us, then let it start with us. Let us be people that walk into 2019 saying, there has to be another way. When I hear people sit in front of me, I think there has to be another way. There has to be another way. There has to be, Dale, another way than it's always been. There has to be another way than, listen, I live in the same world you live in. I listen to the same nonsense you listen to. And I'm a preacher and a prophet of Jesus Christ. There's another way. There's another way. Did you get it? Merry Christmas.